Moff Gideon has escaped Republic capture, but everyone's now wondering who extracted him. Brace yourselves, guys, because I've looked at all the main theories and there's a ton of clues that point in one direction.
I knew it.
The evidence left behind is very concerning.
There's something dangerous happening out there.
We'll start by looking at what we know, who has the capabilities of pulling it off, and then who it's most likely to be. Let's take it from the beginning. Gideon's capture in the end of Season 2 resulted in him losing a Darksaber. He was then arrested by the New Republic and he was set to stand trial. Now at this point, rumours began to swell that he never made it there, which raises questions in itself. Where did them rumours start? Now it turns out to be true. The Lambda shuttle is discovered by Carson Teva. The hull has been breached. All inside are dead. Now these inside are Republic officers. There's also no Gideon body, which means he was taken from the scene, most likely alive. Now, the Beskar fragment in the wall means the Mandalorians are now the main suspects to Carson Teva and probably the New Republic as well, and they certainly have motive to carry out such an attack. He played a big role in the loss of their planet, and they probably want revenge. Now, the Republic thinking it's Mandalorians due to the Beskar left behind could point in a direction of the Children of the Watch. They have had entanglements with Moff Gideon recently, but they don't have any ships to carry out such an attack. The Beskar evidence itself would also rule them out, along with any other true Mandalorian, including Fenru. You see, Beskar is strong. It wouldn't break away from armor in the manner that we found it, especially from weapons that the Republic would likely use. Now, that being said, let's flip this around. What if the fragment in the wall wasn't from armor, but from a weapon? Let's say something that fires metal shards, or an explosive that detonates with shrapnel inside. It's against Mandalorian beliefs to use Beskar as a weapon as it is. Itself can pierce Beskar and therefore is dangerous to other Mandalorian people if it falls into the wrong hands. What's more, Beskar is extremely valuable and in short supply. Why would it be wasted on uncovered Republic officers when a more common material would do just fine? Paz Vizsla felt death would be a suitable punishment for Moff Gideon's crimes. Perhaps that's the general stance of Mandalorian people, or at least it is the Children of the Watch, but in this case, they'd likely kill Gideon on sight rather than take him alive. For the crimes Gideon committed, there would be no trial. He's already guilty as charged, and now he would be executed. I don't think he'd be taken alive and live to see another moment. But with that being said, there is one Mandalorian who is in a lot of people's theories at the moment who would benefit potentially from Gideon being alive. Now that is Sabine Wren. Now she could be seeking answers for Ezra's whereabouts. Now Ezra, of course, was last seen going off with Thrawn. There's no indication that Gideon actually knows Thrawn personally. Besides, Gideon would be a lower rank to what Thrawn is, and he likely wouldn't be privy to the higher-ups' plans, and Sabine, for starters, wouldn't kill any Republic officers. Carson Teva's initial theory is wrong. Evidence actually points away from it being Mandalorians, but then who's responsible? Who would carry out such a task? Taking Gideon alive and in possession of Beskar, whilst also having no love for the Republic?
I will quickly discover the truth of all this.
The answer might seem clear, but there's more to it than meets the eye. Let's flip the coin again and look at it from another perspective. We know Imperials still have the equipment to carry out such an attack. Although depleted, they still have ships and weapons and numbers. They have Beskar also looted from the Perch. This can also be evidenced in The Mandalorian Season 1 when Din takes all of that Beskar for the bounty Grogu and it's then forged into his armor. And these Imperials would likely want Gideon alive. You see, Gideon is their leader. He has a vision for the future, and I wouldn't be surprised to learn that Thrawn has been absent for a long time and has only recently returned to the scene, if he has at all, whilst the other Imperials are all split up, scattered across the galaxy, as the Mandos say. Now, Gideon, I think, is the total ruler of the Imperial remnants in this given area of space. If the rebels captured Palpatine, you can be sure the Empire would be hot on their heels to rescue him. And the same goes for Gideon. Without him, organisation and plans stall, and so does their attempt at reclaiming the galaxy. But what's more, the Imperials also wouldn't care about dead Republic officers, and they're probably actually in favour of killing them, given the option. Because if we look at it from their own perspective, they see on the Imperial side, many of their friends and colleagues have died at the hands of the rebels and now the New Republic. But your generic stormtrooper, I think, wouldn't likely be able to carry out such an extraction. It's just not in their skill set.
And they couldn't hit the side of a panther.
The perpetrators would have to be very highly trained, almost assassin-like. Now, perhaps Thrawn has resources capable of carrying this out. He likely does. Now, there's a theory going around that Thrawn planted the Beskar there to frame the Mandos. He has been known for similar acts in the past, but I don't think this is the case. You see, Thrawn probably doesn't care for Gideon all that much. if he knows him at all. Now, Gideon would be just a resource, he's totally replaceable. That was very much the Empire's mindset, and I don't see why it would change now. So we can draw the conclusion that the Imperials are more likely than Mandos, but it still isn't adding up. There's one more avenue to explore. This is likely to come with a big reveal from Moff Gideon. Although the fragment of Beskar could have been a plant, and I do actually think that is the case, to turn the Republic against the Mandos, you see what that would achieve is the Empire being able to operate freely in the shadows, all the attention's on them while there's growing conflict between the Mandalorians and the New Republic. Now, we have to ask, why would the Beskar be in the condition that it was? It was very much a shard. It was a broken off piece, looking like it could have just been shattered from anything. Now, this is where the lines begin to cross. You see, we have an element that was introduced in the animated shows called Super Commandos. Now, Super Commandos were Mandalorians that were loyal to the Empire, and although what happened to them isn't clear, perhaps they've died, perhaps some are still alive, their armor, although modified, was created originally on Mandalore. Now this is important because in Legends, and we do know they like cherry picking from Legends and bringing it into canon, in Legends, Mandalorian armor, when forged on Mandalore, had other elements added into it to increase its strength, to increase its natural properties. And this was a secret from the Mandalorian armorers that wasn't shared outside. So for the Beskar to be in the condition that we found, it indicates to me that it's not pure, that it's not strong as Mandalorian Beskar, and it's most likely diluted, which results in it being easier to break, which tells me that this Beskar in the wall likely wasn't forged on Mandalore or by a Mandalorian armor. Now, given the events of Rebels, what happened to their leader previously, and the amount of time there's been since the Rebel series took place, there's been no appearances of them since, no mentions of them in the galaxy since. They've likely died off or they've disbanded at this point in time. I really don't think it's them, and plus, why would their armor then be as weak as we see it inside the wall of the ship? Now, I think this could pretty much almost rule them out. Now, with that being said, the Imperials do have access to Beskar. Gideon has an obsession with Mandalorian culture, and his Dark Trooper project has already failed. What if it's time for Plan B? Or what if the Dark Troopers were just start? You see, I think Gideon could have formed his own squad of new Super Commandos using Beskar, and this group could be formed from Mandalorians that followed Gideon when he had possession of the Darksaber, and they're perhaps still led to believe he's the worthy wielder of it. Now, it wouldn't surprise me at all to find out that Moff Gideon is a Mandalorian himself, or perhaps someone who strongly idolizes the Mandalorian structure, how they once functioned, their Beskar and their weapons. Something he's trying to make his own Imperial version of, at least. As the armorer said, the Empire was here for 30 years, Mandalorians have been here for far longer. Perhaps Gideon has also come to this realization. Now, this would also explain the dead officers and no Gideon's body, whilst also explaining the fragment left in the wall. Their armor would be weaker than that of normal Mandalorians if it wasn't made on Mandalore, forged on Mandalore with a Mandalorian armor, potentially adding unknown elements into it to increase its properties. If they do then bring that into canon, or the fragment could have literally been planted there to make it look like it was our Mandalorians or the good guys. But I still do think, regardless if it was planted or not, the end result, who breaks Gideon out, is some kind of hybrid Mandalorian Imperial warrior or group of warriors. Now, it's likely if this shard was fired from some kind of weapon or explosive, they wouldn't really care about using Beskar weapons. They've went against their own people anyway, although I don't feel Beskar would be used for the Republic, so I think we can rule out the weapon idea altogether. It was either a fragment from weakened, unpure armor, or it was planted there. Now, what's more, I think this also then ties into the Elia Kane story that we saw on Coruscant. She's very much acting as a spy for the Empire, and perhaps she's gained intel on what Gideon's transport plans were, and she's then tipped off the Imperials so they knew where to free him, plan the whole thing out. Guys, let me know what you think in the comments. I'm strongly thinking, to summarize, that it's going to be a version of what we saw with the Imperial Super Commandos. Now, probably not them exactly, but Gideon's own version, what he's trying to build here. I think he does have some kind of weird obsession with Mandalore, or he's some kind of dysfunctional Mandalorian himself in some weird kind of twisted way. Let me know your theories. Who do you think broke Moff Gideon out of the transport? Let me know down below. Remember to leave a like if you can't wait for episode 6. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. I'll catch you in the next one. This is The Way.